Now, in this part of the session, we are going to discuss various recommendations which have been given by committees and commissions from time to time. In 1972, Joint Parliamentary Committee on Amendments of Election Laws discussed that there are many advantages of proportional representation system which we apply in India when we compare with other legal systems in the world. Tarkunde Committee on Electoral Reforms of 1975 talked about the role of Election Commission, that Election Commission must command respect from public and it should not be only independent in theory. Goswami Committee on Electoral Reforms of 1990 talked about Model Code of Conduct and related it with the official machinery with regard to transportation, media, state funding, etc. Vohra Committee of 1993 talked about criminalization of politics, and they said that there is a growing nexus between criminals, politicians and bureaucrats. Indrajit Gupta Committee on State Funding of 1998 in its report said that state funding is essential and is having justification on constitutional, legal and public interest basis, because state funding provides fair playing field to all the parties, even to the parties which are having lesser money. Law Commission of India in its report of 1999 said that it may be desirable, but the state funding has to be regulated. National Commission to Review Working of the Constitution of India, which was constituted in 2001, in its statement, in its report, did not endorse state funding and said that there must be an appropriate legal framework to regulate political parties' fund collection as well as expenditure involved therein. Election Commission of India reforms of 2004 commented upon that Representation of People Act 1951 needs to be amended. Second Administrative Reforms Commission held in 2008 that there must be some kind of blueprint prepared for strengthening Indian public administration. Law Commission of India in its 2015 report proposed wide-ranging reforms which include disclosure obligations on the political parties as well as candidates, expenditure limit fixation on the candidates, along with the issues of state funding and also the penal provisions with regard to the offences committed by the political parties as well as candidates. So, there have been many committees and commissions recommending various kinds of reforms which are required for smooth and fair conduct of elections in India. Apart from that, Election Commission of India is empowered to frame guidelines with regard to free and fair conduct of elections wherever there is no legislation or any other enactment. So, there is a model code of conduct which is generally framed by Election Commission of India with the consensus of political parties, whereby majority of political parties give consent and agree to abide by whatever set of norms they formulate and consider them binding and observe in their letter and spirit. In these guidelines, Election Commission of India prohibit political parties to issue any kind of hatred speech during elections. During election campaigning, they must cooperate with the election agents. During campaigning, if they are having processions on the roads, traffic rules must not be violated and individual rights of each and every voter must be protected. Apart from these guidelines, or model code of conduct, election manifestos need also to be regulated by Election Commission of India. This has been said by the Supreme Court of India in S. Subramaniam versus State of Tamil Nadu. So, overall conduct of elections, to frame guidelines to regulate elections, to hold fair, free and smooth elections in an impartial manner, Election Commission performs various kinds of functions as well as duties. To save the country of being in a continuous mode of elections, our former President of India, Shri Pranab Mukherjee, as well as Prime Minister of India, Shri Narendra Modi ji, have suggested that we must have one nation, one election system, which will save taxpayers' money and also which will not stall government programs due to elections. Law Commission of India has also proposed that at least we must ensure 1 year, 1 election program for the year 2019, to which Election Commission of India has also agreed. Parliamentary panel as well as government think tank Niti Aayog has also proposed elections to be held on the basis of 1 year, 1 election at least. We can't afford to have one nation, one election. But Election Commission has said that this can be made possible only if we amend our constitutional provisions and related laws to make it happen, because we will have to extend or shorten the duration of few state legislative assemblies to hold elections at least in the beginning of 2019. Chief Election Commissioner O.P. Rawat also agrees that elections should be held simultaneous, but for that we need to have legal framework ready, which is a very time consuming process. If legal framework, that is constitutional amendments and legislative amendments, are done, we are ready to hold elections in the beginning of 2019 for whole of India. Time frame for holding the elections as provided in the Constitution says that not more than 6 months should elapse between the holding of elections and dissolution of assembly and the next session of the House. So, it means not more than 6 months can intervene between the two houses, one which is dissolved and one which has come up after the elections are over. So, Election Commission has to conduct elections within the time frame given in the Constitution, and many constitutional bodies recommend that there are at least 1 year, 1 election policy implemented, and we cannot afford to have continuous election process going on in India. So, we have discussed the electoral reforms recommended by the committees and commissions. Apart from that, what is the role of Election Commission in framing guidelines, providing election manifestos and model code of conduct for smooth conduct of elections in India? In the third part of this session, we are going to study the role of judiciary in making elections transparent and accountable for the people of India.